This is the Alden Report.
Hey, it's Mike Alden. I hope you're enjoying the Alden Report as much as I am. I love bringing to you new and exciting people that add value to your life. I'm also super excited to announce my latest book, Bestseller Secrets. Listen, if you're an author, maybe you're thinking about writing a book, maybe you've already written a book, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to continue to grow your brand, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to bring in more leads, maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you wrote a cookbook or a children's book, maybe you wrote a fantasy book, a self-help book, a tell-all book, a novel. It doesn't really matter. In my latest book, Bestseller Secrets, I give you all the information that I've literally spent millions of dollars trying to figure this thing out, and I'm going to give it to you absolutely free with my book, Bestseller Secrets. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com. I give you all the information that I've spent literally millions of dollars trying to figure this whole world out. My books have gone on to do amazing things. I'm a 3-time Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestselling author. I've hit number 1 on Amazon hundreds of times. My books have been the number 1 book in the world against all books in every category. And I've also done this for other authors. And I'm giving you this information absolutely free. Just go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. You got to pay a small processing fee, but it doesn't really matter, again, because I've spent millions of dollars. And here's the other secret. You can do all this stuff yourself. If you don't have a team, that's okay. If you don't have a lot of time, that's okay. You read the information in my book, again, whether you just started writing a book, whether you've written the book, whether you wrote the book years ago, and you want to kind of resurrect it. In my book, Bestseller Secrets, I show you exactly what you need to do, and I'm giving you the book absolutely free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com, download the book, take that information, use it to become a bona fide, legitimate number 1 bestseller. I show you how to become a number 1 bestseller in less than 24 hours. And again, I'm giving you this information for free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com.
This is the Alden Report.
All right. Well, my name is Michael Alden. We are here in Blue Bay Studios. As always, I always say how excited I am to have my guests. I love talking to real people, doing real things, and from all like walks of life, from, just the traditional entrepreneurs to poets, to lawyers, and now accountants. As an entrepreneur and a business person, so one of the biggest mistakes that I made in the very beginning was I didn't have an accountant. And that cost me literally millions of dollars. And I got into some IRS heat. I've talked about that in my books. And so I'm excited for my next guest. His name is Dan Nicholson. He's a CPA. He's an entrepreneur himself. He's also got a book coming out called Seeking Certainty. And he also has an app that deals with, really kind of how we think about money, how to make money, how to save money, all that fun stuff. And I'm super excited to have him here because, quite frankly, I'm going to be taking notes pretty feverishly myself because I think I have a lot to learn from him as well. And he probably charges, who knows, thousands of dollars an hour, but we're going to get him free here for the next, I don't know how long, on the Alden Report. Dan, thanks so much for being here, man. I appreciate you spending the time with us.
Yeah, super, super excited to be here.
So I bet you didn't know that stuff that I just said before you came on. But before I start to pick your brain and try and get some free information out of you, and for my viewers and listeners, tell us a little bit about your background too. Because before you came on, I was introduced to you through another friend. And, a lot of accountants, my accountant actually is great, and the one that I do have now, and he's got a personality, but a lot of accountants that I've met really just don't. I know you do. That's why you're here. But tell us a little bit about your journey and why you decided to go down that field of becoming an accountant.
Yeah, well, the resume says that I'm an accountant, and one of my businesses, a CPA firm, says I'm an accountant, and some of the other stuff I'll tell you. But I have like an identity crisis because for most people, accountant is this, they have like a very visceral response or idea of what that is. And I don't consider myself to match up with most of those stereotypes. For a long time, I would introduce myself as a business person or non-conventional accountant, just so somebody would be like, what is that? Like, business person, that's the most generic thing I've ever heard. Like, what do you actually do? And it would at least allow me to have a conversation with them. Or non-conventional accountant, what is a non-conventional accountant? And at least I was getting over kind of the anchor people have of an accountant before they concluded I was boring. At least I got 30 seconds more
Right.
than normal. But to kind of rewind a little bit, maybe like many of your listeners, was the cliche kid scheming on business ideas growing up, mostly bad ideas, and ended up getting an accounting degree and an information systems degree just because I thought technology, accounting, language of business, best skill set to be an entrepreneur. And then I went down a dark path, a totally different direction of entrepreneurship, and then eventually realized that there was just an opportunity to do something different in the accounting space.
Yeah, well, it does seem an interesting path. You know, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier before we went live. I'm an attorney by trade, and we talk about an identity crisis. I used to, when people ask me, "What do you do?" and I was like, "Well, I would start out with, I'm an attorney by trade," just because I just wanted to tell people that I'm an attorney, just because I'm a kid from the projects, and I just feel like I have something to prove. And I've always had this identity crisis, like I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an author, I'm an attorney. I'm like, I'm not really sure. I'm a marketer. I'm doing all these things. But like, so the educational route, though, they say that the three hardest exams in the United States is the CPA exam, which I know is multiple days and multiple sections, the bar exam, and then the medical boards. So like, tell me a little bit about how difficult it really is, because I know that passing the CPA exam for a lot, it doesn't happen the first time around. What was that journey like? Was it difficult for you, or is this something that you just kind of gravitated towards and just kind of got it?
Yeah. Yeah. Last time I checked, the first time pass rate, someone who passes all 4 sections of the CPA exam the first time, is something like 12%. So it's staggeringly low. I didn't have a choice, and in terms of when I was going to take it necessarily, and I'll tell you what I mean. So at the start of my final year of college, I got nominated for a fellowship at the board that writes all the accounting standards, sort of the, I guess, Supreme Court of accounting, sort of a legal parallel for your
Right.
And so I ended up getting a fellowship. Ended up getting the fellowship there. And in my final interviews, everybody was like, "Hey, so fellowship's been around for 20 plus years, and every fellow has passed the test the first time for like 18 years in a row." So you're like, "Hey, so, just a heads up, no one hasn't passed the first time in 18 years or something like that." And the person you're going to be replacing got the second highest score in the country. So, just curious, are you planning on taking the test before you start? It's like, okay, got it. Yeah,
No pressure.
You're telling me I need to take it and I need to pass it, otherwise I'm going to break this streak. So I took it right during my final year. The test at the time was available, I think, in April and October. So I took it in April, and I kind of was just all in. I was still in college, and it was the only there was a 6-month period. That's the only time since I was 12 or 13 that I didn't have at least a part-time job. So school, college, I'd saved up a bunch of money. So college, studying for the CPA exam was basically my job. And the exam is a memorization test. So, and the one thing I'm good at is memorizing. So it played to my strengths.
And so, all right. So I'm assuming you did pass on the first time. Yes,
I did. Although somebody who started 6 months after me broke the streak, and I was grateful to not be that guy. It's like,
it's a lot of pressure there. But then after that, though, even though you pass the CPA exam, then after that, isn't there? I don't know if it's a state by state thing, but then don't you have to have like certain, like 1,000 hours of like working as essentially like an apprentice?
yeah, basically you need about the equivalent of a year of working experience within the profession. So yeah, there's an experience requirement, and then there's a separate ethics program and test that you have to pass. And then if you do that and get signed off, then you get your license and go into kind of the regular renewals, 120 hours continuing education every 3 years.
Yeah, and so that's a lot of work, man. Lawyers, depending on the state, like Massachusetts, you don't have to do that. Massachusetts actually doesn't have CLEs, which is awesome. So I keep my license active, even though I don't practice anymore. I know that a lot of lawyers in different states that move on to different careers, they just go inactive. So, now, how did you get into working with entrepreneurs? And I know you had said that you had a lot of ideas when you were younger, and a lot of them didn't work. Do you also just kind of consider yourself, when we talk about this identity crisis, as an entrepreneur yourself?
Yeah. So while I was working at the accounting board, I was doing a bunch of different things on the side, and working on um, an app that was a bad idea that didn't go anywhere. But I always have had something on the side. And then when I left the board and I worked for one of the big global firms, Deloitte, I to maintain my continuing education classes, I took some real estate courses. And so basically, I got a real estate license. In the process of renewing my CPA license, I kind of double dipped and got credits to also get a real estate license. So had a real estate brokerage and property management company and things as I was sort of on the side while I was working my day job. If you've ever had any experience with working with a firm like Deloitte, day job is like 70 hours a week. It's not, it's like 2 day jobs, but always had something on the side. And then about 10 years ago, I realized, hey, maybe I'm pretty good at this accounting thing and I could kind of disrupt the accounting industry.
And is that what has become? I know we haven't talked really about it now, but I think it's an easy transition. So you developed an app called the Certainty app, and we talked a little bit about it before. And for those, if you just go to certaintyapp.com, you can learn a little bit more about it. Is that kind of like the big thing that you're doing right now with this app to kind of help not only just entrepreneurs but just people to make better financial decisions?
Yeah. So for 10 years, I've operated almost 11 years, an accounting firm called Nth Degree CPAs. And I've had, somewhere north of 3,000 sales calls with business owners, small business owners. And as an accountant, specifically on the tax planning side, what you're really doing is helping people pay less in tax so that they can take that money and allocate it toward the things that they want. But most accountants, one, don't even do the planning because they're so focused on the past. And two, if they do the planning, they don't actually show the client how to reallocate it. And so what I started to realize was that really what my clients wanted more than anything was this idea of financial certainty. They wanted to use their business or businesses as a way to get closer to the things that they wanted, but they didn't have any tools to measure whether or not they were getting closer or further away. Because people have their cool vision boards and everything, but that's not a solvable equation. Like the picture of your Lamborghini and the picture of you with the six-pack abs and you with free time and family time and all of that. That's cool, but we actually need to figure out what does that cost and when do you want to fund it by and what do you currently have, and back solve for how much more money you need to make to hit all of those dates and timelines. So I built this tool that's sort of like a GPS for folks to show them how their business and the decisions they're making with their business are actually getting them closer or further away from sort of funding that vision board.
Yeah, as I'm sitting there listening to you, I gotta be honest, man. Like the whole accounting thing is, as entrepreneurs, like I said earlier, I was literally on a call with another entrepreneur and a mistake that they made from an intellectual property standpoint. But, as entrepreneurs, we're we have a vision, like the vision board you just talked about. We have ideas, and we're going to push things forward, and we're just going to grow the business. And I'm not the only one that has ran into challenges where the numbers, the numbers don't add up, and it's hard for us to kind of to recognize that. Does this app, that you've developed, does it help us kind of guide us on our journey to make those decisions that you talked about? Like if, first of all, it's obvious that I already have the six-pack abs. I'm not really a car guy, but so is that what this is really doing for people to be their guide?
Well, first thing, you got to get a tighter hoodie because you're not really showing off the six-pack abs.
I
as
know.
well as
I
you
know.
should.
I just got this. Is my friend wickeddrones.com. But anyway, keep going.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not. No, when you got it, you got to flaunt it a little bit more, I guess. But
Yeah, no, listen, I'm going to be honest with people. I know it's going to shock people, but I do not have six-pack abs, nor have I ever. So anyway, keep going. You might though. You look like you're fit, but so anyway, we're going down a rabbit hole. So does this app really kind of help guide us to getting those things that we want, the Lambos or whatever, or getting to, because when I think about just the name of your book, also that you have coming out called Seeking Certainty, and the Certainty app, and we're talking about kind of like, for me, it's almost like financial security, I think, in a way, or being able to say, all right, man, like, cool, we're heading in the right direction. Is that what you're talking about in your book and in your app?
There's a couple things that we're trying to accomplish. One is showing people how their decisions are actually correlating to getting them closer to what they want. There's this really unfortunate assumption that business owners make, which is that more is the answer to every problem. More sales, more clients, more employees, more businesses. And sometimes that's the case, but sometimes it's not, right? So we default to more as the answer to everything because we don't have the solvable equation. We don't actually know where we're at now, where we want to go, how much more we actually need to make. So the part of what the app does is help you quantify, actually see, visualize what you need and how your business decisions are getting you closer or further away. The other thing that it does is that most business owners, first off, I consider business to be gambling. We make a ton of bets, right? That accounting standard I referenced, the board that I worked at, and the accounting standard I worked on was a derivatives and hedge accounting standard. So half of my career is in hedging and capital markets and all that. So I think about things in terms of bets. And hedging is this idea. Let's just eliminate, excuse me, it's all the bad things. Like, let's just create upside where possible. Most business owners, and I'm waxing a little bit philosophically here, most business owners are making bets that add a ton more risk to their business. So it's like, okay, we're either going to make $100,000 or I'm going to be homeless. It's, that's an extreme. And so part of what the app also does is show you how much risk your business has and how ready you are to do something new, add something new, hire someone, add a new line of business, etc.
It's interesting, what you talked about too, like the more concept, because when I first started out, I'm 46 now, and I started in my business in 2008. What I used to like to say was the worst economy in the history of the world up until now. And that was the mentality: more sales, more people, more revenue. But for me, that actually did not turn into the most important thing that I was neglecting, which was profit, right? And I had a mentor, actually I had a guy that I owed $750,000 to because I was losing $200,000 a week, come to me and audit me. And he said, Mike, that year we did, we at the time it was 33 million. I think we might've hit 35 by the time the year ended. And he said, congratulations, not many businesses will ever do that now or ever in the future. It's a big number. However, you lost 2 million. And what if I could show you a way, because he had an accounting background, what if I could show you a way to cut your sales in half and keep 2? Which one would you choose? And I joked around and I said, well, I kind of like telling people 35 million.
That's some gravitas.
That year also got me into some serious heat with taxes as well. So, when we talk about the term growth, I'd just be curious, and it was really also interesting what you said about being in business as gambling, because I like to gamble too. But so when we talk about growth, can you grow your business in a way that doesn't necessarily mean more sales and more revenue? Does that seem like a weird question? Am I asking that right?
Well, like most things, the answer is it depends. We could grow our profits without increasing our sales.
Right. Or you could increase your profits without adding top line revenue.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
I do this thing where I look at someone's profit and loss statement by month for the last 3 years. And I just go, what if all the months where you had a loss, you just broke even? So let me just change that number from a loss to a zero. And what happens? Usually, when I did this a bunch of times last week, and the lowest percent increase in profits was 60%. For several of them, it was more like they would double or triple their profits if they just got rid of the negative months. And so then you look at it, and I do it over 3 years to see a trend. And 80% of the time, the months that they had a loss are the same. So they have 4 or 5 months that they lose money, and the other months are either break even or profitable, but it's the same months every year. And so then that helps us inform what's going on. Why are we consistently losing in these months? Is it something you're fighting against industry wise? The nature of the business that you're in? Are they business decisions that you're making, or is it you? Are there things that you're doing? You're pissed off in January every year, and so you buy a bunch of stuff and you lose a bunch of money. And so then we can reverse engineer and figure out, okay, how do we just get these lost months to break even before we even talk about trying to grow a bunch, because we could double, triple our profits just by doing that.
Huh, man, you're making accounting sound interesting when we start to talk about profit, so we're on with Dan Nicholson. I met Dan through another friend who said, you got to have this guy on. And I was excited to have him on again, because myself personally, as I mentioned when I opened up, the numbers, I'm a lawyer for a reason. I don't really like the numbers, but I love growing businesses. I love the profit side of things. I love, the cash that comes in, and I'm not really a huge materialistic guy, but I do like financial security and certainty. I can't say that word today. But to be candid, and I talk about this all the time, I still haven't really had that, even though I tell people all the time that I think that most people would kind of love to be in my shoes. But it's still, there's just things aren't really that certain for me. So if you'd like some more information about Dan and what he's doing in his app, the Certainty app, you could just do that, certaintyapp.com. You just Google him. He's out there. You could Google Dan Nicholson CPA. You can find him. But if you really want more information about it, you can go to certaintyapp.com. So, when I think about, profit, and I think about what you're talking about and being able to, I love the idea, hey, let's just change it to zero, and we got break evens, and also the profit just went up. Tell me a little bit about the mentality that you hear a lot with entrepreneurs. I hear this actually with salespeople, because I got a bunch of them. And I also hear this with business owners about wanting to, you want to take a loss, you want to lose money. And like, tell me a little bit about that, like that philosophy or that thought process as an entrepreneur. Like, why would I want to lose money, and why would I want to show that? Is it a tax thing? Like what's going on there? Cause I don't get it.
Yeah, these generalities are dangerous that people throw out there. This sort of all or nothing type mentalities that a lot of people kick around. There's so much dynamic complexity in what you do, I do, because the answer to most things is it depends. Depends on what you want. Like, how do we help you? The solution to you is different than the solution to somebody else.
I'm laughing because my accountant, he's technically not a CPA, but he passed the exam and he just didn't get the hours. And so so far your response is exactly what he would say to me, but keep going.
Cool. Yeah. So here's the deal. Finance, accounting, tax is behavior-based, just like sales, marketing, operations, HR, relationships with your friends, etc. Behavior-based. U.S. tax code, behavior-based. In that sense, it's inherently fair. I didn't say good or bad. It's inherently fair. If you want to pay 0% tax, like investors pay 0 to 20% tax, big corporations 25% or less, many 0. Individuals 30 to 50%, small business owners 40 to 60%. If you want to pay the 0 to 20%, you have to modify your behavior. Now, the folks, the high net worth folks, pick your favorite billionaire, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Mark Cuban. They don't wake up on April 15th and find out that they owe a bunch of money in tax. They've made sure that they don't owe any money in tax. there's, so they have a business plan for their taxes, and they do things that are the counterintuitive or the opposite of what most individuals and small business owners are doing. So if you
Hold on, what are those
uh,
things? Are you going to get to? You going to tell us what those things are? I hope.
I can, yeah, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I want let's talk about what are those things. So what are the tell us how these contrarians think and how, because I don't know if I would technically be considered a small business owner, but maybe well it depends on how you define it, if it's people or revenue. But
Sure.
so yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how people like Donald Trump. I mean, look, Warren Buffett talks about it all the time. Look, I should be taxed more, and my the famous story about how his assistant pays more in taxes than he does.
Right.
So like, yeah, give us some tips. So I do have a ton of entrepreneurs and small business owners that listen and watch this podcast. So let's talk about the things that they should be doing and how to change their behavior.
The interesting thing, if you look at the average tax rate for the last nearly 100 years, average effective tax rate, it's basically a flat line. So but we've had higher tax rates, lower tax rates. Moral of the story is that it all averages out to about the same, because Warren Buffett or Bill Gates says, sure, raise my taxes, but they still figure out how to arbitrage or navigate the updated tax system, right? They have a business plan for their taxes, because your tax bill is usually, if not your biggest expense, one of your three biggest expenses: salaries, cost of goods sold, rent, and then taxes, right? So most business owners have no game plan for tax mitigation. Give you an example of a contrarian approach or thought or way in which things are leveraged differently. When I was at that big global firm I was referencing, my main client was Microsoft. They had a huge, still to this day, I believe, huge investment portfolio, $100 billion, trading floor, all this stuff. IRS has a permanent office basically on their campus. Microsoft's basically under perpetual audit. Most of us would crap our pants at the thought of that, right? Sounds terrible. I'm not suggesting you want to be audited, but Microsoft has made that an asset rather than a liability. It's an asset because if you want to keep fact checking and auditing me, I can be more aggressive. Counterintuitive, but more aggressive, because I can go, well, what about this option? What about this option? And so they have a ton of documentation, and it becomes iterative. And over time, you figure out the game plan.
Yeah, when you think about, to like what you just said, people crap their pants when you think about being audited, or you get those letters, which I've gotten, and certified letters from the IRS. A lot of people freak out about it, and I've actually written about it in my first book. I think in my second book as well, and I think you'll agree with this, that the IRS is the IRS, but they're I actually had a conversation with an IRS agent who walked into my office years ago, and she said, we're not here to put you out of business. We're not here to ruin your life. We're not here to really to disrupt anything. We're just here because you owe money and we want it, right? And when I realized that they're just like us, they're not bad people. They're doing their job. And when you realize that and you address it, things get a lot easier, right? But also when you think about when I'm listening to you talk about the plan and coming up with a plan, I think a lot of people might think that they might not necessarily fall into any of these categories, or they feel as though that they're not entitled to some of these categories. And you always hear people, again, talk in the broad sense of write-offs and things like that. But your behavior is something interesting, again, that you talked about. So as entrepreneurs who want to keep more, we really do need to change our behaviors, right?
That's right. There's a bunch of low-hanging fruit that folks are missing. Often we're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies, but we just don't realize it. So there's low-hanging fruit that's already out there. The challenge, most accountants are archaeologists. They just dig up the past. When they say this year, they mean last year. And so the only way you can change your behavior is look to the future. Find out, close the gap on what you didn't know, and add the stuff in. So we miss low-hanging fruits, things like the Augusta loophole, having an accountable plan, setting up a holding company to optimize entity structure, minimize tax filings, make yourself as judgment proof as possible. But then we have more proactive looking things like if you said, hey, I want to pay zero tax. Okay, well, the easiest way to do that is through real estate. It's currently the most tax advantageous thing. So you, or I don't know if you're married, but you or your spouse could achieve what's called real estate professional status, which is a tax definition, or you could buy short-term rentals, both of which would allow you to offset losses against any other taxable income. These are on paper losses, though. They aren't actual losses. So back to your other question, I'm not an advocate of generating losses, actual cash flow losses. But if you can generate on paper tax losses, then that's a win in terms of offsetting or not paying income tax.
Yeah, again, I really am enjoying this conversation. For those listening and watching right now, I hope you are too, because I think a lot of us, it goes back to what you said. People get really nervous and scared, and they feel as though that, you actually caught yourself. I think you were going to use the word manipulate when in fact you used the word leverage, I think, and arbitrage instead. It sounded like, I don't know, you said that because I've done that before. I say, oh, no, let's leverage things. Let's use the things that are to our advantage. And the tax code, which changes every year, I think, right? Or at least every 4 years. There are certain things in there that are designed for us to use to our advantage, but because it is so voluminous and because it is so complex, really the only people that get it are lawyers and accountants or a combination of the two. So we, as well, I am a lawyer, but just as traditional kind of lay people, our eyes gloss over. That's probably why I got my glasses. No, I have my glasses because, by the way, they were only 99 cents. And I'm going to talk to Dan about how I can write these things off, but and I probably could because I'm on the podcast. But anyway, so if you, so you said like a bunch of different things. I just wrote down the Augusta loophole, and then you talked about having on paper losses and not real losses. So for your average everyday person, who is, let's say, just a single member LLC with maybe a couple employees, and they're selling goods and services, what are some of the things that they should be looking at? And let's say they do have an accountant, right? So are there some things that kind of remain static throughout just the tax code that people aren't taking advantage of?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. One, if you want to evaluate if your accountant is doing a good job and staying up on things, open up your tax return, go to the end, to the section called statements, and look to see if you have an election called the de minimis safe harbor. It's going to reference the tax code, and it's going to be one sentence or so. And every return you file should have this election. So if you're trying to figure out, is my accountant being proactive? Do I have this election in my tax return? The Augusta loophole I teased has been around for more than 20 years. I learned about it indirectly in college. And it's this idea that basically you can rent your home up to 14 days per year, completely tax-free. It doesn't matter how much you're paid. You could be paid $100,000 a day for it. So the business context is that your business could rent your home from you for board meetings, for example, podcast things. There's a bunch of different scenarios where the business could rent your home. Not talking about home office, that's different. The business could rent your home. And the business would pay you fair market value rent. What would it cost you to rent a local conference room? That's where often board meetings are held, in a conference room in a hotel. What would it cost for that? So typically that's, depending on where you live, $1,000 to $3,000 for a conference room for a day. So your business could pay you $1,000 to $3,000 up to 14 days per year. That's a tax deduction for the business, but that money goes to you that you do not have to pay tax on. That's been around for a long time. You could Google Augusta loophole. You'll get thousands of hits and references to that. So there are strategies like that that folks.
Can I ask you a question about that one in particular? Because I'm listening. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Because I'm always talking to my accountant all the time. I'm like, man, I have a massive house, and I do have a home office. I'm here in our actual offices that we rent. And I do have meetings there, and I do have people there, and my whole life is my business, right? And so if let's say someone has never taken advantage of the Augusta loophole, and they do, does that then trigger anything within the IRS that they're going to be audited?
I have not seen that
Mm-hmm.
be the case.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is that to document all of this. I mean, there are some additional documentation things you do, but at the end of the year, the business would issue you a 1099 because the business paid you rent. And so then on your tax return, you report the rent, and then you offset the rent and you reference the section of the tax code that allows you to do that. And now you've said to the IRS, I'm using this part of the tax code that's allowable for me to do this. So you've done all the right reporting, and we haven't seen that have any impact on audit. And we've yet to have a client, knock on wood, we've yet to receive an IRS notice about the Augusta loophole.
Huh. That is really, really interesting. Again, so we are on with CPA Dan Nicholson. Again, you could just Google, because I did, just to make sure, if you go, because your name is probably a common name, Dan Nicholson CPA. He's also the CEO of Ninth Degree CPAs. He's got this kind of cool app called Certainty app, and it helps people, again, with the name of it, is trying to have that financial certainty or financial security, and help guide you, as you're moving forward in this game of life that we're in. So again, if you want some more information about Dan, you could just Google him, Dan Nicholson CPA. His website will come right up, and also the Certainty app. Dan, tell me a little bit about your book, Seeking Certainty. When's it coming out? What's it about? I'm just guessing, it might have to do with your profession and what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, so in the process of working some things out with publishers, so probably the summer of this year, but I don't have an official launch date. I did a pre-sale a couple months ago and sold a bunch of copies, but like I said, working things out with the publisher. But ultimately, it's about rigging the game to win, which is, I'm sort of this believer that every system is perfectly designed to generate the outcome it's currently generating. And so if you're not getting what you want, then you should change the inputs into that system or re-engineer the system so that it gets you what you actually want. So I spell out in the book my operating system, basically, of how to systematically rig the game to win, to generate the outcomes that you want, so that you're getting closer to this idea of financial certainty.
I like it. And you have a podcast called Rigging the Game.
I do. Yep. Some people get really triggered when they hear it, because they think I'm just like, oh, you're talking about rigging the game is like sketchy. And no, I'm not talking about doing anything illegal or inappropriate. I'm talking about your business exists to serve you. Every action should get you closer to the things that you want. That's my belief. Unless you work for some big corporation, then you've got to serve the shareholders. But if you own the business or have a few partners, that business should be serving you. And so we need to set up the system in a way to make sure that's happening.
When you think what I really appreciate what you're saying too, because you are, I would say, atypical of most accountants, because most accountants aren't out there really kind of talking about this stuff, I think, publicly. I know that there are some, but I think it's not very common for this type of public discussion to be happening. So I'm super excited that you're here. And again, for the viewers and listeners, like, man, this is like, I wrote down Augusta loophole. When we're done, I'm going to be calling my accountants. They have a couple, and say, guys, like, can we do this stuff? But so I want to talk about risk for a second, because you had referenced how you believe that business is gambling, and I don't disagree with that. So how does one mitigate risk? Because as a lawyer myself, we're always thinking about, exactly what you just said. How do we minimize or mitigate risk in business? What are some of the things, or some of the pillars, or some of the principles that we should do? I don't know necessarily how to frame it or give you an exact idea of, like, maybe give you an example, but let's just talk about risk in business and some of the ways to mitigate it.
Yeah, I would love to. risk is just the probability that something bad might happen. And so if we're trying to rig the game to win, let's get rid of all the bad possible scenarios. So we only have upside, right? And what I see happen consistently, because I'm a nerd and I look at the data and I do all this analysis, and is that most business owners think that when they start their business, cash flow is just going to keep going up and up. If I just keep working at this, over time, I'm going to just keep making more and more money. And indirectly, what they're saying is that more money is just a function of time. Okay, just put in the work and I'll make it. And then what actually happens is they get a ways into the business and they see it go up, and then all of a sudden, 2 months later, they're out of cash, and then maybe it goes up again, and they're on this roller coaster, right? And so what's behind all that is that risk is the thing that keeps going up and up and up because they don't have a way to identify it. So I'll just give a couple things to think about for folks. One, because I believe business is gambling, every bet we make should be an asymmetric bet, a bet where the upside is substantially greater than the downside. Most business owners are making bets where the downside is equal to the upside, or the downside is worse than the upside. I'm going to be homeless, or I'm going to make $100,000. That's downside to me, much worse than the upside. So we have to think about, is this an asymmetric bet where the upside is substantially greater than the downside? Because money is a finite resource, time is finite. So if I invest in or make a bet in one business opportunity, that takes all these other options off the table for a while because I can't do all of them, right? So the opportunity cost is pretty great. So we need to understand asymmetric risk, this idea that is the upside substantially greater than the downside. The great entrepreneurs, the Elon Musks of the world, they're just naturally gifted at identifying asymmetry and going like, I could see how SpaceX is, or Tesla, or they can see, Bill Gates can see, et cetera. The rest of us, we aren't calibrated to find it. So we need to build tools that allow us to evaluate, is this asymmetric or is this not?
Now, is there a formula for that? Like for just a universal formula? I mean, I know we can kind of, just look at things and say, I do it all the time, like, like risk reward, but it's not necessarily like dollars, or, it's more about like, this may work or this might not work. And, is there a formula or something like key principles that we should look at just in general in being in business?
Yeah, so I write about this in the book, and I build a tool for myself. Just about everything I do and talk about is just scratching my own itch, frankly, like trying to solve my own problems,
right,
as an entrepreneur, and then seeing the same pattern repeated across our client base. So I built something that I call the 4 lenses, and it's based essentially off what are the 4 things that I care the most about, or that can get me closer to things I want. So the 4 buckets are, so I take each idea, I put it into a spreadsheet. So I have a running list of ideas essentially. And I go, okay, idea number 1, is this idea a forcing function? Is it going to cause me to create something I plan on doing anyways? All right. If so, I was going to do this anyways. So there's not a whole lot of risk because I plan on building it or spending time on it regardless. Number 2 is it a time savings now or in the future for me or my team? If so, how much time? Number 3, will it be revenue producing? And I need data to actually support that. Not what I think is going to happen, but can I get some data that says this is going to be revenue producing? And then will there be an associated cost savings? Yes or no? Need some data. If so, how much? So I take each idea, and my criteria is that I need to check at least 3 of the 4 boxes for me to proceed with the idea. And then I'm picking the highest opportunity item, the one that's going to save me the most time, most revenue, most expense reduction. That's the one I'm going to do first, even if it's not the one I'm the most excited about. And so what I've done is that I'm picking the highest leverage item, but also, even if the revenue isn't what I expected it to be, I still have other factors that may come into play. I've still got the forcing function. I still got the time savings. I've still got the expense.
I like it, man. I think that's a great place to end it. I really appreciate you coming on. We've been on with Dan Nicholson. You can check him out. First of all, you can check out his app called the Certainty app. It's certaintyapp.com. You could just Google him, Dan Nicholson CPA. You'll find his company, Ninth Degree CPAs. Dan, a question though: what if someone wanted to hire you? So someone's listening right now, and they're anywhere in the country. Could someone hire you and your firm? Is that how it works? I don't even know if that works that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Our process with our CPA firm is that we build people the business plan for their taxes and finances as the starting point. Here's all the things you're missing. Here's how we implement it. Here's the savings. And, frankly, it's rare that there's not a clear 4 to 10x multiple of our cost and savings because there's so much that people didn't know they didn't know.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think Dan might have a new client actually. This is a guy with these 99-cent glasses and his friend's hoodie. So all right, that's awesome. So again, if you want more information about Dan, again, just Google Dan Nicholson CPA. I just love your candor, man. I love the fact that you are in fact a CPA who did pass on the first time, and you're talking about real stuff, real business stuff that a lot of us, like myself, we don't think about. We focus on just growing the business, but we sometimes, and I say I'm kind of painting a broad brush. I know that some people think about it. I haven't, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like me, but there are some that it might think a little bit differently. He also has a podcast called Rigging the Game. Like you said, it sounds like kind of a sketchy title, but it's really not. I mean, he's just showing you that, look, and I've learned this for a long time ago, if you want to play in the game, you should know the rules of the game. And the rules of accounting are in fact complicated, but someone like Dan knows how to navigate those rules and use them and teach you how to use them to your advantage. He also has a book coming out, depending on when you're listening to this. It's called Seeking Certainty. So, again, whenever you listen to this, you could just probably get on Amazon or anywhere where books are sold and pick up that book. I'm really interested in checking out that book myself. I've learned a lot, man. I'm so glad that we were introduced. I'm so glad that you were here today. My name is Michael Alden. That's Dan Nicholson, and we'll see you soon. Hey, it's Mike Alden. I hope you're enjoying the Alden Report as much as I am. I love bringing to you new and exciting people that add value to your life. I'm also super excited to announce my latest book, Bestseller Secrets. Listen, if you're an author, maybe you're thinking about writing a book, maybe you've already written a book, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to continue to grow your brand, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to bring in more leads, maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you wrote a cookbook or a children's book, maybe you wrote a fantasy book, a self-help book, a tell-all book, a novel. It doesn't really matter. In my latest book, Bestseller Secrets, I give you all the information that I've literally spent millions of dollars trying to figure this thing out, and I'm going to give it to you absolutely free with my book, Bestseller Secrets. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com. I give you all the information that I've spent literally millions of dollars trying to figure this whole world out. My books have gone on to do amazing things. I'm a 3-time Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestselling author. I've hit #1 on Amazon hundreds of times. My books have been the #1 book in the world against all books in every category. And I've also done this for other authors. And I'm giving you this information absolutely free. Just go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. You got to pay a small processing fee, but it doesn't really matter, again, because I've spent millions of dollars. And here's the other secret. You can do all this stuff yourself. If you don't have a team, that's okay. If you don't have a lot of time, that's okay. You read the information in my book, again, whether you just started writing a book, whether you've written the book, whether you wrote the book years ago, and you want to kind of resurrect it. In my book, Bestseller Secrets, I show you exactly what you need to do, and I'm giving you the book absolutely free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com, download the book, take that information, use it to become a bona fide, legitimate #1 bestseller. I show you how to become a #1 bestseller in less than 24 hours. And again, I'm giving you this information for free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com.